So the sound that you heard this morning wasn't that of a world taking a sigh of relief over the Iran arms dealer. It wasn't a world marveling at the fact that human beings, little people like you and me, we created a machine that did a flyby of Pluto, currently the planet Pluto, but they may change that. No, it was a scream of horror from a generation of white women, because Atticus Finch is a racist! Oh! Oh God! I need wine! Oh! 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 Atticus is a racist! Oh! Oh God, no! Yeah, so apparently, To Kill a Mockingbird, Harper Lee wrote, or allegedly wrote, depending on who you consult, a sequel to a novel, which pretty much meant that she hasn't had to work a day in her life since the mid-1950s. So To Kill a Mockingbird, it has been a staple of high school reading curriculum for generations. 60s, 70s, I read it in the 80s, 90s, when I was teaching high school in the mid-2000s. It was in the curriculum. It's one of those slices of just great American literature. Whether you love him or you hate him, man, in To Kill a Mockingbird, Atticus Finch is a fucking stud. This is a man who peacefully and non-violently stares down some of the most toxic, hateful, racist men in his town and defends a man who would otherwise be killed. So I've got much love for Atticus. Please don't misinterpret that as I go into this video. But as the sequel, Go Set A Watchman, comes out, suddenly people have read the book and the reviews are just scathing. I'm not going to go so far as to say it's a hit job by the literati, but yeah, it's a hit job by the literati because the creator of a character is trying to do something with that character. So I woke up this morning. I have a little alarm app on my phone that goes off, and it pipes through to NPR, so I get NPR's feed coming through in the morning. And the first thing that I heard when I woke up was, poor Maureen Corrigan. Poor Maureen. Harper Lee's Watchmen is a mess that makes us reconsider a masterpiece. As another Southern writer once said, you can't go home again. In Harper Lee's Go Set A Watchman, which takes place in the mid-1950s, a 26-year-old Scout Finch takes the train from New York City home to Macomb, Alabama, and finds the familiar world turned mighty strange. TV and air conditioning have changed the landscape, and beloved childhood friends like Dill and her brother Jem have vanished. Others, like Calpurnia, look at Scout here, called by her grown-up name of Jean Louise, as though she were, well, a white lady. No! Not a white lady! Oh my God! I bet she's cis too. Oh, tragic! And then there's Atticus, now 72 and crippled by arthritis. He's still a wry patriarch, but in one of the novel's key scenes set, as in To Kill a Mockingbird in Macomb's courthouse, Atticus allies himself with the kind of men who several years later stood shoulder to shoulder with Bull Connor and George Wallace. Go Set A Watchman is a troubling confusion of a novel, politically and artistically, beginning with its fishy origin story. Allegedly, it's a recently discovered first draft to Kill a Mockingbird, but I'm suspicious. It reads much more like a failed sequel. There are lots of dead patches in Go Set A Watchman, pages where we get long explanations of, say, the fine points of Methodist worship service. The novel turns on Scout's disillusionment with her father, a disillusionment that lovers of To Kill a Mockingbird will surely share. Reeling from the Supreme Court's ruling in Brown versus Board of Education, Atticus reveals himself as a segregationalist and a reactionary extremist. He's such a staunch proponent of the states' rights, a critic of federal programs, even popular ones like Social Security and the GI Bill, and a foe of the NAACP. One could say, as some commentators already have, that Atticus here displays layers of contradictory attitude about race harbored by whites, no matter how progressive. But no, this Atticus is different in kind, not just degree. He's like Ahab turned into a whale lover, or Holden Caulfield, a phony. In To Kill a Mockingbird, Atticus was his own man. Here, he essentially tells young Scout, you have to get along to get along. This Atticus, we're told, joined the Ku Klux Klan in his youth. He's now on the local Citizens Council. This Atticus is a eugenicist. He believes in racial theory and reads pamphlets with titles like The Black Plague. He warns the horrified Scout that we're outnumbered here, and observes that our Negro population is backwards, and the Negroes down here are still in their childhood as a people. Scout, who takes up her fallen father's torch of progressivism, likens his views as those of Hitler and Goebbels. She's so strong, oh God. Fucking please. So here's the thing. People are, I'm trying to do geek-centered programming here. I did the whole San Diego thing. Why are you talking about a book that a majority of people probably wouldn't have read in the first place? Hell, I didn't even know that Harper Lee was still alive. It's like the authors of my 11th grade English curriculum have all been kind of secretly hiding out there years after we thought they were dead. J.D. Salinger, when J.D. Salinger died, my first thought was, isn't he already dead? And now here we find out that Harper Lee is still alive, and she's cranked out a sequel, 50 years later, to kind of her signature book. So, why are you talking about this? Well, here's the thing. One, I have to say, it's been kind of amusing to watch people just cry themselves crazy over this book in various media outlets. And it's kind of one of these odd little hypocrisies that's really making me start to question the progressive movement just a little bit. Now, to tie this back into geek stuff, one of the big themes in comics for years has been this idea of retcons and revisions. The idea, if you're not familiar, if you're surfing in from the literati, to watch this before you leave me some kind of a toxic comment. Retcon is retroactive continuity. It's basically when a story comes along and says, yeah, that story that you saw, well, here's what was happening behind the scenes. Here's what you didn't know what was going on. And we're supposed to take the old continuity and blend it in with the stuff that we find out was going on in the background. It's kind of a great writing mechanism for lazy creative teams in comics who can't think of a new damn idea. So instead they'll say, God, that story that I read when I was in middle school, man, in junior high, that story that I read when I was in high school, I'd love to do another Dark Phoenix, man, but oh shit, someone already did Dark Phoenix. But I can do a retcon to Dark Phoenix. Here's what you didn't know. For example, Jean Grey actually wasn't Jean Grey wasn't Phoenix, but she was possessed by this thing called the Phoenix Force. And Jean Grey was actually put inside a cocoon, and that cocoon was inside the crashed remains of the shuttle. And when the shuttle crashed into New York, into the bay, into the harbor, it just sat there because, apparently when space shuttles crash, nobody ever does, debris reclamation. Nobody ever thought, there might be radiation. I lived in Central Florida for 15 years, and I saw more than my fair share of shuttle landings. There's always that point where, ground crews make absolutely sure that there are no gases, there's nothing else on the shuttle, didn't bring anything down with it, before any human beings actually get near to let the crew inside out. So, yeah, okay, sure, Jean Grey has been in a 5-year coma in this cocoon, and yeah, sure, that's a retcon. Meanwhile, revisions are exactly that. Let's take a character and let's race swap the character, let's gender swap the character, let's do something to the character to make the character different. Now, usually this is dog whistling for, let's pander to a minority audience that we really want to bring into comics, because sweet Mary Christ forbid, we can't create a good character who just happens to be of another race. We can't make an awesome Latino that people are going to want to read. No. Let's kill Peter Parker off in the Ultimate Universe, and instead, let's make a Latino kid the new Spider-Man. And again, the thing is, man, I dig Miles Morales, but, this might be my age showing. I was of an age and a generation where when you were writing, you didn't use gendered terms like female policeman, female police officer, female lawyer, female this, because that kind of demeans who and what they are. It's like, what, the police officer can't be a police officer without being a woman? Well, it's the same way with a lot of this gender swapping and race swapping. You can't create a character that you can make interesting enough for comic readers to want to get into without kind of taking this pre-existing, almost like a branded identity. You take the brand and you put it on the character, and the idea is, well, after a while they'll get used to it. And again, I dig Miles, man. I think the new Fantastic Four film is going to bomb for 500 other reasons than the race changing of Johnny Storm. I think that is that kind of dog whistling and pandering that I was just talking about. The idea, hey, let's get more black people reading comics. Let's make Johnny Storm black. And we won't make his sister black, though. I mean, I've said that when that whole hullabaloo went down. I always said that was the easy way out, man. To make Johnny Storm black was the safe decision. If they really wanted to do something edgy, if they really wanted to push the envelope, what they needed to do, they needed to make Sue Storm black. Because again, if you're familiar with the Fantastic Four mythology, Sue and Reed, they're going to fall in love. No matter what the reboot is, they're always going to have a relationship. She is always introduced as Reed's girlfriend. So, she's the girlfriend, and Johnny is the hot-headed bratty brother because apparently they couldn't find anybody else to run the console on a spaceship. So, if Sue Storm was black, Sue Storm falls in love with Reed Richards, who is white. I can't think. Now, apparently friends have told me, well, the Flash, Iris is a black woman, and that's great. Apparently, again, I didn't hide the fact that I bailed on New 52 pretty early, and I kind of blacked it out like I went and hung out with Bill Cosby. But I can't think, at least in the Marvel Universe, I think Jessica Jones and Luke Cage, but there aren't, and they're, I hate to say it, they're kind of a low-tier character. If you take Reed and Sue, the matriarch and the patriarch of the first family of Marvel, and you make them an interracial couple, that is edgy. Because if anything else, that means when it's time in the lore for Franklin to come along, Franklin is going to be a biracial child. So, when you talk about this idea of race swapping and gender swapping, I always get a little suspicious because I can't think, why can you not make a minority character who's interesting? I mean, listen, Marvel, I'm going to give you guys credit, man. Ms. Marvel is fucking amazing. I am loving me some Kamala Khan. Why can't we do that with, no, okay, fine, I just shot myself in the foot. Ms. Marvel, they took Carol Danvers' identity and they pushed it onto Kamala, but I think, she's kind of the example that you can take very non-mainstream characters, and if you make the writing good, if you make the characters good, if you make the story good, people will latch onto it, man. So, this whole idea of race swapping and gender swapping, it kind of gets comic fans in a snit, and I can't say that I blame them. I don't agree with a lot of the language that I hear, and, I'd be lying if I said that a lot of the Johnny Storm stuff I saw wasn't racist dog whistling, but here's why I'm getting where I'm getting there. The big response from kind of mainstream society, and even things like, feminists in comics and other, they were just like, your characters have been white for long enough. You can just get over it. If we're going to change a character, they're going to change it for us. You can get over it. So, as I hear about Atticus Finch being retconned as a racist, all I can think is, for all the people who are crying, where's your get over it, kids? Where's the accusation of piss baby? Come on! Doesn't it suck when someone does that to a character that you care about, a character that you believe in, a character that means something to you? As far as I'm concerned, Atticus Finch is still Atticus Finch. Why are you getting so pissy about this, NPR? Why are a lot of you literary critics getting so pissy about this? Whatever happened to get over it? So I say that because this also kind of dovetails into another thing. I've mentioned DC's New 52 reboot several times. Back in 2011, DC, a comic house that seems to reinvent itself more than Madonna did back in the 80s and the 90s, they just finally said, hey, you know what, all the continuity, everything, pre-crisis, post-crisis, final crisis, crisis, great son of a bitch of crisis, all that stuff, just forget it, man. We're going to wipe the slate totally clean. And they did. There was this god-awful event called Flashpoint, and Barry Allen kind of screwed up the timeline, and then trying to unscrew the timeline, screwed it up even more, and pretty much rebooted history. Everything in the DCU was all the way back to day one, day zero. And again, comic fans weren't always happy with that. A lot of the oldsters who had been promoting, especially DC, through some of the really shitty days in the 90s, when it seemed like DC's way to get attention was, who haven't we killed this month? We did Robin, so we learned that if we killed Robin, that got us media attention, that got us a sales spike. Okay, let's do Superman. And they got that, and let's not kill Batman, but let's have his back broken, and somebody else can be Batman, and let's do something to Wonder Woman, and you know what? Green Lantern, man, nobody gives a shit about Hal Jordan. Let's have him go insane, and he can sacrifice himself, and that'll get us a new, younger Green Lantern, and Green Arrow, who the fuck, here we are in 2015, back in the 90s, who cares about Green Arrow? Let's kill Ollie Quinn, and then have his son come out of nowhere suddenly, and his son can be the new Green Arrow. So DC decided to get rid of all of that, and they totally rebooted. Everything was fresh. Everything was new. And again, the fan base was kind of pissy about that. And, again, you saw the usual, I guess we'll use the phrase, white knights, certain people who don't think that they're represented enough in comics. Even though the great irony was, DC and the New 52, they have all of these like social justice warrior defenders now, man. But I can remember back in 2011 when the cosplayer we only know was Batgirl. She came up and she said, hey, why are there not more women involved? And my God, she got ravaged, just on all sides. It was like open season on Batgirl cosplayer. So DC, in their smarmy way, because, apparently the big lesson we've learned so far is DC just knows how to make friends. DC knows how to keep their audience happy and content. So DC editorial came in and they said, so what if we reboot? All those stories aren't going to change. Blackest Night isn't going to change. The Judas Contract isn't going to change. Batman Year One isn't going to change. All of your books will stay the same, and you can go back and you can read them whenever you want. And by the way, buy our enhanced trade paperback version of Batman Year One with 3 new pages of material. Okay, fine. So all I can say is this, is I see people in the literature sphere just shitting themselves in a panic over the revelation that Atticus Finch is a racist, all I can say is, your dog-eared copy of To Kill a Mockingbird from 1988 isn't going to change. You can read it. It'll stay the same. Change is inevitable.